Hello and welcome everyone to class number 2 of the Azon 30-day challenge. Just to make sure everything is connected up okay, if you can both see my screen and also hear me speaking, if you don't mind giving me a yes in the chat box, just so I know everything is working good on your end. All right, excellent. Thank you very much, Gina, George, Alan, Sean, Joan, Jacob, everybody else as well. Now, just like last week with class number 1, I'm going to be doing the actual training material here first, and then at the end of tonight's lesson, I will have an open question and answer session. So if you do run across questions as the class progresses, I am happy to answer them, but please try to hold them until the end of the class. That way, when you want to go back through and watch these recordings at a later point in time, they will make a lot more sense without interruptions with all the questions all in one section. For today's class, we are going to be working on website setup. Basically, we're going to go from getting our domain registered and setting up our web hosting in WordPress today, all the way up to where we're basically ready to start adding content to our website. Now, to begin with, the first thing that we're going to be doing is registering a domain name. Then we'll proceed on to set up our website hosting. Then we're going to install WordPress, set up initial settings there. We're going to set up the plugins and the theme we're going to use on the site, and then finally create our site structure. Now, to start with, we need to register a domain name. I personally use GoDaddy.com for my domains, but you are welcome to use your own preferred domain name registrar if you prefer a different one over GoDaddy. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter where you register your domain name, it will all work the same in the end. Now, in the past, say 3 to 5 years ago, my main recommendation for building an Amazon niche website was to try to find an exactmatch.com domain name, where if the primary keyword phrase of my site was going to be fastest SSD, for example, then I would want to find fastestssd.com because Google would help to put my site up in the top of the rankings for that particular keyword. Well, you do still get a minor boost from having an exact match domain these days. However, most of the good ones have been snatched up, and it really seems like this whole portion of my site building process is really where a lot of people got hung up in the past, because they would find what seemed to be a great niche, but then maybe the domain name wasn't available for it, and they'd have to go back to the drawing board. Well, I've done experimenting myself, and I can tell you that it really is not going to make a major difference what you call your website in the end. You could have a site about computers and name it completely something different that has nothing to do with computers. You could have the domain name called wackyclowns.com, and it could be all about computers, and you can still get top rankings for computer-based keyword phrases. It's really more about what the content of your site is about. So with that said, I recommend trying to find kind of a combination between the old style exact match domain and what I call a branded domain name. For example, GoDaddy is obviously a branded domain name. GoDaddy.com really doesn't have too horribly much to do with websites or domain names, unless you're considering maybe the end of it, the addy part could maybe be an abbreviation for address. But otherwise, this is simply a branded domain. And you have this kind of stuff all throughout the internet world and also the corporate world. Dell Computers, Coca-Cola, all of these different companies are using a brand. Well, you can use your own brand. You don't have to get incredibly creative with it if you don't want to. But I kind of like combining a brand along with some kind of a keyword in my domain name. So for example, my site is going to be targeting solid state hard drives, abbreviated as SSD. So I'm going to end up including the letters SSD in my domain name. When it comes to the rest of my domain name, though, I can really kind of come up with anything else to go along with that I want to, and hunt around until I find something that's available. I could call it something straightforward like SSD reviews, but again, that kind of gets into exact match domain name territory. Since my site is going to be kind of focused on using these solid state drives to help people speed up their computer, I went with that angle. And I actually went for a speedy SSD. Now, as you can see here on my page, speedyssd.com is already taken, but this is actually taken because I've already registered it. Unfortunately, this is kind of one part of the process that I have to go ahead and do ahead of time because I need to get the domain name set up and pointed to the website hosting so I can actually demonstrate all this to you guys, or else I run the risk of setting all this up now and not actually being able to access the live website during this class. So with your own domain name, first find your domain. Again, if you can have any part of your domain relating to what your niche is about, then that'll be a little bit of a bonus. But if you can't find that for some reason, if you have some kind of a name that you've come up with that you want to use as your branded domain name, and maybe it doesn't contain your keyword phrase in it, that is quite all right too. Your domain name should really not be a part of this process where you get hung up or stalled out. If you have to make a choice though between a longer domain and a shorter domain, I try to go as short as I can possibly find. It seems like once your domains reach a certain length, they become a little bit harder to get up in the search rankings. It just seems like all of the domains that are maybe 10 or 15 letters and under that I've registered in the past, they all just breeze up to the top of the search rankings when combined with all the other tactics that I use. So with that said, once you have your domain name registered, you go through this whole process on GoDaddy or on any other site that you're going to be registering your domain name. However, you'll likely end up being offered all these upsells during the process, things like private domain name registration and email accounts and all these other extras, SEO packages and things of that nature. I'd really advise to decline all of them. There's not anything else extra that you will need to go along with your domain name except for a web hosting account. Now, personally, I really do not recommend using GoDaddy for web hosting at all. I generally end up and also recommending HostGator. Now, HostGator used to be a lot better than they are these days. I will admit that part. However, I do still personally use them, and my sites still function okay on them. They're just not really in the best in the customer service realm like they used to be. However, for the average Amazon affiliate that's just going to set up a basic web hosting account and install WordPress on it, you're likely not going to end up running into any problems with your server where you would have to actually contact your web host. So I think for the average user or for extremely technologically savvy users, I think HostGator is still quite okay to use these days because their servers are pretty fast compared to a lot of the other shared web hosting accounts. Now, it is okay if you want to use more than one domain name on a single web hosting account. HostGator has packages where it says unlimited domain names all on one account, and you only pay, I think even the highest one's only like $10 a month or something. Those accounts are just what you need. It's called shared website hosting. You can put 10, 20, even 30 of these Amazon websites on a single shared web hosting account. So as you build more and more sites, your cost per site on a monthly basis will decrease because you don't have to keep buying this web hosting over and over again. So once you have your domain name figured out, if you need to start a new hosting account, then you would want to enter in that domain name as the primary domain for your hosting account. Otherwise, if you already have a web hosting account where you can simply add on additional domain names, you can simply do that. That's actually what I will be doing for my website here. So what you're looking to access is something called the control panel, otherwise known as Cpanel. Initially, you're not going to be able to access this through your actual domain name. But once you have your domain name connected up with your web hosting account, in the future, I could reach this by simply going to speedyssd.com/cpanel, and that would take me to the page that you see here. For now, though, it's actually sending me here on HostGator to a HostGator server address where it's gator plus 4 numbers.hostgator.com and then a colon and the numbers 2083. If you have just set up your web hosting account, you should get an email after your account is created that would contain a link such as this where you can go and access your control panel. Otherwise, if you already have a domain set up on it, then you might be able to use that domain. Whatever the primary domain name is of your web hosting account, you can usually go to that domain, add the /cpanel onto the end of it, and then you'll reach the control panel just like you're seeing here. So once you are here, one of the main things you're looking for is the domains section. And this is going to be if this is an existing web hosting account and you want to add on a new domain to it. You first go here to add on domains. And then you're simply going to add your domain name to the top line. And once you do that and click below, it's going to automatically populate your FTP username and also the document root. If you want to set a different password other than the one that you're using for control panel by default, enter that in here and simply add in your domain. This just creates the domain name in your web hosting account. It puts a separate folder on this web hosting account, and then everything located within that folder will end up running this particular domain. Now, with the domain name added on to our account, the other thing I want to look for are my name servers. Down in the bottom left of your control panel, you should be able to find these. It's labeled as name servers, and there will be 2 lines. Mine says ns8165.hostgator.com, and the next one is the same number, just 1 number higher. I need to copy these name servers and point my domain name to this. This is what allows my domain to be connected with my web hosting account. Now, this is done through GoDaddy.com or whoever your domain name registrar is. Simply log into your account. If you are using GoDaddy, though, once you log into your account, you're going to land on a page just like you see here. You simply want to click on the Manage button here. And this is going to open up a list of all the domains that you have registered under that particular GoDaddy account. So now for me, I'm going to be looking for my Speedy SSD site. Seeing as how I have a fair number of domains registered in this account, makes it a little easier to just search for it. Now you can see my domain here, Speedy SSD, and my name servers that go along with it. So I can simply click on the name servers that are listed here, and it'll open up a box for me where I can edit them. So if I need to change these name servers, I just click on Edit Name Servers right here, and then I can paste those 2 different lines into these boxes. Just make sure you're putting them in separately. This is a web address, essentially, for your web hosting server. But it's a little different from a standard web address. You can't type it into a browser and reach it. It's what's known as a name server. So unless you have both of these entered in correctly, as it's provided to you in your hosting account, it's not going to connect up your site to your hosting. Now for me, I have already set these up. This is something that I had to do ahead of time so that I would actually be able to access this website during this class. Sometimes when you point these name servers to a new server, it can take upwards of 24 to 48 hours before you'll actually be able to type this domain into your browser and be able to reach that website or that web hosting account. However, there are some other cases where you enter them in, especially maybe right after you have just registered a domain. Sometimes you can come in here and enter in the new name servers, and you will be able to automatically reach it once you have set up the rest of this. But if for some reason you can't, that is why. Simply give it a little bit of time and you will be able to reach it again. Now the next step that we need to do is going to be to install WordPress. The first thing we're going to be doing is through the control panel, if we go to Software and Quick Install, we can actually install WordPress through this control panel. There are other ways to perhaps download and manually install WordPress, but if you're using control panel, you should have this quick install option available to you. And this makes it much, much easier. Plus, this quick install can actually help to keep your WordPress installation up to date. It'll automatically update it for you. So once we are in to this quick install area, we just want to go to WordPress. They have redesigned this a number of times over the years, but it still basically works the same way. Depending on your hosting company, there's likely going to be all these different upsells that go along with it. You're not going to need any of this stuff. All this can be done completely for free. So just click on Install WordPress right here. Then you want to select your domain name from this list. And where it says install path here, you want to make sure this is left blank. You don't want this installing to an actual path on your site. You want it to be in the base directory of the domain. Finally, you want to provide some information for yourself and for the blog. For the blog title, you can go back at a later point and change this, but I typically just set this as the name of my website. Oftentimes, I'll even include the .com ending. Everything else here is just providing basic info like your name and the username that you want to use when you log into the website. So once we click on install, the installation is going on up here in the top. So you want to see that your install is complete. If there are any problems or errors, it's going to show up at the top of the screen here. But you should see this little drop-down box that says View Credentials. And this is going to give you a link to the admin area, as well as your username and the password for your WordPress administration. So make sure you copy all this information down. Once you leave this page, you're not going to see this password again unless it emails it to you. So now when I proceed over to the admin area address here, that takes me to the login page for WordPress. I simply enter in the username and the password that it just gave me a moment ago, and then I will be able to access my website. Now, before I get into the rest of the training here, I'm actually going to be updating my password. If you're okay with using the long auto-generated password that it automatically creates for you, that's quite okay. For me personally, seeing as how I've put it on video for everyone to see now and in the future, then obviously I would want to be changing mine. Right. I know I said I wouldn't stop for questions, but this is a good point that I would mention. Daryl has brought up that admin obviously is the most common choice, and when hackers are trying to get into your site, this will be the first thing that they try. That is something that people commonly say. However, I've been running WordPress websites for I don't even know how many years, 6, 7 years, something like that. And I have had WordPress sites get hacked. However, they're not getting into your site by breaking your password, essentially. Yes, if you have a really simple password, somebody could use a script to basically try all different combinations of your password to try to gain access. And if they already know your username, then they only need to get the password part right, obviously. So from that perspective, it is a lot easier to prevent somebody from getting access to your site in that manner by having a username other than admin. But personally, every time I've ever had a WordPress site get hacked, they end up getting into the site through some kind of security vulnerability to where they don't even need the login information to actually get into the site. And so I really haven't noticed a lot of difference from having different usernames set up for each of my different sites. I've even published videos such as this for roughly 5 years or so now that includes my admin username on the recordings, and I still don't have issues with those sites getting hacked. So I do believe, at least to a certain extent, that recommendation may be a little bit of a common misconception. However, it can still be a good practice to simply do so. But honestly, it's not something that I've ever really worried about. And when people have gotten into my sites, it's not through that way. It's usually WordPress releasing new code, and there ends up being a way that people can get in through some kind of a vulnerability that way. So with that said, I'm going to continue on with my WordPress installation here. I've gotten logged into my admin area now, and I changed my password, something that would technically be optional for everybody else to do. For the next part though, I'm going to be setting up my initial WordPress settings. This is going to start with going to the dashboard and going to updates. You might notice up at the top of the screen, at least it was showing it on the top of my previous page I was on, there was a notice asking me to update to WordPress 4.3. However, it looks like the quick install has already taken care of that and updated it automatically. I would still check though on the updates page just to make sure you are indeed using the latest version of WordPress. If for some reason you're not, there will be a little button right here to update. And this also applies to people that may end up not using quick install. You would have to manually go to this page to actually update WordPress. The next thing we're going to be doing is going through the settings. There are a couple of different settings pages here in this settings submenu that I always end up going to right after I have created a brand new site. On the general page, I need to change my title and my tagline. Now during my installation, I set the title, which has transferred over to here, but if I ever wanted to make some changes to that, I can do so through this page. My tagline, though, is not something that it allowed me to set on the previous screen. The tagline of your site is text that's going to end up showing up at the top of all the pages on your site. And so I like for this to be a brief tagline about what your site is going to be about in terms of letting your visitors know. But it's also a great place to include one of the primary keyword phrases that you might be targeting on your site as a whole. So for me, this is going to be either SSD or solid state drive. My primary keyword phrase that I'm going to go after, and everything that the rest of my content will kind of be related to, is fastest SSD. So I'm going to call my tagline, I'm going to say helping consumers pick the fastest SSD. So you can see how this is short, but also meaningful. When people land on my site and they look at this, they can kind of instantly know who my site is for and what it's going to be about. But then I also have a keyword phrase laid in to my tagline as well, something that no matter what the content is of any of the pages throughout my site, this SSD phrase being up at the top of my page will likely end up being beneficial to me. So once I have this set, I'm going to go down below and save my changes. And then I'm going to proceed on to the writing page. Now on this page, the one thing that I find important to do is provide a list of update services. Now, this is not going to work when you publish a new page, but when you publish a new post on your site, talking about the difference between WordPress posts and WordPress pages here. When you publish a new post, WordPress can automatically notify these different update services, which can in turn help you to get your site indexed faster on Google. Now, a lot of people will commonly recommend to put as many different possible update services as you can find in this list here, because the more pings you're sending out there, the faster you'll get indexed. You know, the more is merrier type of a mentality. I'm more of a quality over quantity type of person, and so I really use a fairly short list for these update services. And this is something that I've updated for this year, and will also be providing you guys with this current list that I use. So you just punch this list into the box here and save your changes, and then we're ready to proceed on. Next up, we have the reading link. Now on this page, up at the top here, we will come back later and set a static home page in this drop-down box. For now though, I'm really more interested in the checkbox all the way down at the bottom that says discourage search engines from indexing this site. Now I don't want to keep this setting on forever, but at least while I'm doing this initial setup of my site, before I actually start to add content, I do want to discourage these search engines from indexing it, because they might pick up information or an incomplete site, and it might take them longer to come back and actually index me a second time. So I simply check that box to begin with, save my changes, and then I am ready to proceed to the next step. So now I'm going to go to the permalinks page. On the permalinks page, I simply want to click on post name right here. This is going to change the format of the URLs for my site so that it is something more meaningful based off of the title of my post, instead of the default that uses a date along with my post name. So once again, I will save my changes here. So I have gone through now and updated each of these settings. I've done my updates. I've done the general, the writing, the reading, and the permalink settings. So I'm now ready to proceed on with plugin installation. Now, the first thing that I want to do here, before I actually go through and install some of these plugins, is to actually remove some of the unnecessary plugins. A lot of times when you install WordPress, especially through a control panel's quick install, you end up with all these extra plugins on the site, and you really don't end up needing them. In fact, the lower number of plugins that you can have activated on any given WordPress site, the better that site will perform. All of the activated code from a plugin has to be loaded anytime a page of your site is accessed. So simply having a couple of plugins as opposed to having 20 or 30 plugins installed on a site can cause your pages to load significantly faster. And this can have a big effect on your search rankings too. So I consider this to be a vital part. And also kind of as you progress through building your site, if you ever find yourself not using a plugin that you have installed and activated on the site, go ahead and deactivate it. If you're planning on using it later, that's fine. Just wait until you're actually ready to use it, perhaps, to get it activated. The one exception to that is when you're first setting up the site here, though. It is quite okay to go ahead and pile a couple different plugins on, the ones that you know you're going to use during your site construction. So anything you see underlined here on this page is the name of a plugin that we are going to be installing on this WordPress site. Step number 3 here, though, where it says download and install, these are the two Amazon plugins that I have actually included as part of this class. And then as part of this whole process, we're also going to be setting up Google Webmaster Tools and Google Analytics. So to start with, I'm going to go to the plugins page on my site, and we can see what is installed by default. There are actually 5 plugins that have all been put on this site, and 4 of the 5 are actually activated. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is select everything that is activated, and then I'm going to click on deactivate here and apply it to all of those. So now I have deactivated all the plugins on my site. I could leave them like this. The files still remain on my site, but the code is not actively being loaded when somebody tries to visit the site. However, if it's not something that I will end up using at a later point in time, I just go ahead and delete it, just because there's no point in having a bunch of plugins here that you don't use. So I'm going to select 4 of them again. The one that I am leaving behind is WP Super Cache. I actually do use this plugin. However, I'm not going to actually use it until my site is complete. I find having this activated from the get-go can actually make it a little more difficult to build your site. Sometimes you'll make a change to a page, and then you go and view that change, and nothing happened, and you think you did something wrong, when in fact, you're just viewing the old cached version of that particular page. So until I'm ready for that, I will leave that plugin in place and simply delete all of the others. So now I'm just left with this one plugin, and again, it is currently deactivated. So now I can proceed on with installing my other plugins. We're going to be starting here with one called Simple 301 Redirects. To find any of these plugins, minus product style and ASON exit cache, you just go to plugins and add new, and then you can search for it in this bar right here. So I search for Simple 301 Redirects, and I can find the plugin right here and install it. So I am going to go ahead and activate this plugin now that I have it installed. The next ones that I need are product style and ASON exit cache. Again, I mentioned that these are the 2 included software titles that are part of this course. If you go to the members page, ryanstevensonmarketing.com/30-day challenge with hyphens in between each word there, you get to the course content page, and at the top here you'll find the links to go and download product style and ASON exit cache. On each of these pages, once you click on those links, you will arrive to these separate download pages. You just need to look for the download plugin link. So this one here, download product style plugin, and then on ASON exit cache, download ASON exit cache plugin. So get these 2 plugins downloaded to your computer. Then you can come back to your website, go to plugins and add new. This can also be done from the top of the page here. This time though, we want to click on upload plugin. And finally, we want to find the actual plugin. So now here, I have installed or downloaded product style. It's going to be called AMZPS, will be the first letters of that file. So I want to find it and click on install. Now for now, I'm going to go ahead and leave product style and ASON exit cache deactivated. But I am going to go ahead and put this software on my site. So ASON exit cache is titled ASON exit cache. Once I have these ready, I can then proceed on to the next one, which is one called SEO Ultimate. Oops, I'm on the wrong page here. Now, SEO Ultimate is the plugin that I use for SEO enhancements on my WordPress site. There are a number of other alternatives to this plugin, things like Yoast SEO, all-in-one SEO. If you happen to be more familiar with one of those other plugins, you are welcome to use them. I don't necessarily consider one better than the other, but SEO Ultimate is one that I've been using for many years. My sites get good rankings with it, and so I simply have never bothered working with any of the other ones. So with this plugin installed and activated, I then have an SEO link in my sidebar. This SEO link contains all the sections that are available for this plugin. There are a couple of these that I always mess with right from the get-go. One of them is the Meta Robots link. This takes you to a section here that allows you to prevent the search engine indexing of a number of different types of pages throughout your site. And I actually end up selecting all of these with the exception of the two that say comment right here. This prevents things like author pages, admin backend pages, my login page, things like tag archives, date-based archives, category archives. Keeps all this extra stuff that WordPress generates, and it keeps it from getting indexed by the search engines. The reason why I do this, I only want Google and other search engines to be able to index the actual pages of content that I create, the ones that are going to contain that unique, meaningful content on them. Otherwise, you end up with potentially hundreds of other pages on your site that can end up having a lot of duplicate content on them, a lot of these ones that WordPress will generate. So I simply exclude everything again except for the two comments. Now next, I want to install a plugin called Google XML Sitemaps. This plugin is something that I use to automatically create a sitemap XML file, something that can be submitted to Google Webmaster Tools. And the plugin also actively updates that and keeps Google updated with those changes. And it even does this for Bing as well, but Google is the main reason why I'm using this plugin. Well, if you go to Settings and XML Sitemap, once you have this plugin installed and activated, you can see the URL of your sitemap right here. So for me, it's speedyssd.com/sitemap.xml. Now, I don't have any content yet on my site. And when I do write a post, it is automatically going to notify Google and also Bing about these changes. However, I still want to actually set this up for myself. So I want the address for my own XML file. And then finally, I want to go to Google Webmaster Tools. Now, if you don't know how to get to this, it's google.com/webmasters/tools. You can also find this by simply Googling the words Webmaster Tools. Now, I typically try to keep a lot of my sites separate when it comes to my Google accounts. However, you will kind of end up being limited in how many Google accounts you can create. So you kind of have to find a little bit of a balance there. I have my main balance with being the Amazon sites that I create privately and the ones that I've kind of created in public training courses. I kind of keep those separate so I don't end up ruining my pre-existing business by sharing all of my websites with people, because people do see my websites on these training courses and they blatantly rip them off. They'll register the .net or the .org version of my same exact domain name and put up word for word the same content that I have on my site as well. So with that said, I keep my stuff a little bit separate to a certain extent. You may not have a reason for needing to do that, though. You may be able to just pile all of your stuff up on one Google account. Signed into your Google account, though, you will be using this same account for both the Webmaster Tools and later for Google Analytics. So to start with, I want to add in a property here to Google Webmaster Tools. And this is going to be the domain name of my new site here. So now what I need to do is provide a verification method. You can download this HTML verification file. I typically do it this particular way, where I then go and upload it through the file manager in Cpanel or through FTP. However, there is also an alternative method, one of which is to add a meta tag. You can actually take this meta tag here and enter this into your site. If you go to SEO and miscellaneous, this is in the SEO Ultimate plugin, you actually have a little section down at the bottom here for the Google Webmaster Tools verification. However, notice how the whole string that I copied in here, notice how the beginning of it looks exactly the same as what you're seeing here. It's actually only asking for what is found between these content quotes right here. So I want to go right up to the first content quote and delete it, and I want to delete everything after that quote too. So I end up with just this string of letters and numbers. So this is going to be this middle part here. So unfortunately, Google Webmaster Tools makes it a little difficult to actually try to select that portion of it. You can see it right here in between the quotes. So simply pasting that in to SEO Ultimate here, it will actually verify my site through Google Webmaster Tools. So I can now click on Verify down below, and I have successfully verified my ownership of this site. Now for now, that's all you really need to do here. You're actually not going to have any other information available to you. The only thing you can really do, I'm sorry, there is one more thing we need to do here, and that is to submit a sitemap. Click on the bar up at the top here where it says Sitemaps, and you have your Add Test Sitemap button, and now it's just asking you for a link. So we want to enter in sitemap.xml for our base domain. If you've set this up in the base domain, just like I've shown you using the Google XML Sitemap plugin, it should work in this same manner if you just type in sitemap.xml. So click in Submit, and this will submit our sitemap. and we can see whether it has picked it up correctly or not. Now, for me, I'm getting an error initially, and you're likely going to end up getting this same error too if you've followed my training so far. But you can actually ignore this one. The reason why is because we're not currently allowing Google to access our site. And this even includes the sitemap.xml file. So for now, it's not able to do this. But next week, when we actually start adding content to our site, we can change this and allow Google to index our site. And we can actually go ahead and resubmit this and get this cleared up. The next thing I want to worry about doing, though, is getting Google Analytics set up. When you log into your Analytics account, if you have existing properties already on that account, you'll see them presented here, and you can end up going into these and adding additional properties to them. What I really recommend to do, though, is keeping each of these separate. So they're all listed in a separate folder like you see here. The reason why is if you ever reach a point where maybe you want to sell one of your sites, you need them in separate accounts, essentially, under this listing account, as opposed to being separate properties. This actually would allow you to transfer an entire account over to a new user. But if you have multiple websites put under one account, you're not going to be able to do that. So what I'm looking for on this admin page is this account drop-down box here. And I want the link all the way down at the bottom that says Create New Account. So when I click on this, I can provide the information for my site now. So I call this BDSSD. Put in my website name and my website URL. And then I select an industry category. Now, if you can't find a relevant industry category here, it is okay. Just try to find whatever fits your subject matter the closest. The reporting time zone is for your own personal use. So the times are actually showing up in a time that you understand. For all these check boxes down at the bottom, I uncheck the bottom two. This gives people access to my account, marketing specialist, technical support specialist, simply because I end up not using that kind of stuff. But I do leave these other two enabled, especially the benchmarking one. This helps to give you some extra data within analytics. So now we can click on Get Tracking ID, accept the terms of service, and finally we are provided with this script here. So what I want to do now is copy this entire script, and I'm going to paste it into a notepad file, and then I will come back to this in just a few moments. So we have gone through and set up all of our plugins now, and I've also set up these additional website services, Google Webmaster Tools and Analytics. Now, just in case you're not familiar with these are going to help you to track your search rankings and also to help track your actual website traffic. So this becomes really useful later on once your website is actually completed. Before the class is over, not the class, the entire series, the last class of this series, we'll actually be revisiting Analytics and Webmaster Tools to talk about some of the future applications for your site with those services. So now we need to get our theme setup. I'm going to be using a theme called Weaver Extreme. This is the newest version of the Weaver theme, something that I've been using for at least 3 or 4 years or so, I would say. And I'm a big fan of this theme because it offers a lot of different customization options, especially for it being a free theme. They do have a pro version of it. It is not my theme. It's developed by, I don't even know the guy. I think his name is Bruce. So I'm not connected with the theme in any way whatsoever. And you don't have to get the upgraded pro version. You can actually use the free version forever. That's all I use. I've never upgraded to the pro version. I find the free version features to be more than enough for what I'm looking to do. So now we're going to get this theme installed. We're going to be setting up a couple of extra plugins. The reason why I didn't mention these before in the previous step is because they go along with this theme. And then we're going to actually go through the theme settings, and this also involves actually getting our site design put together. So going back over to my website now, if I go to Appearance and Themes, I can add a new theme using the button up at the top. And then I simply search for the theme name over here. So over here, I'm just going to type in Weaver Extreme, hover over this, and click on the Install button. Once I'm done, I can activate it, and then my theme is ready to be used. Now, as soon as you have activated it and you get taken back to this theme page here, look at the notice that is up at the top. These plugins, at least 2 of these 4 plugins, are the additional plugins that you need to install. One of them is Weaver Show Post. So I'm going to open this into a new tab and click on Install Now. And go ahead and get that activated. And then I can do the same thing with the Weaver Extreme theme support. Once I have these 2 extra themes activated, or plugins activated, these help to add additional features to the Weaver theme. It's not something we'll be utilizing in this class, but as we put the website together, we will be utilizing those 2 plugins that we installed. The couple of additional plugins that they recommend, they're not necessarily bad. You can take a little bit of time to explore them. If you don't have much or any HTML or CSS knowledge, you can use something like WP Edit, and it expands your editor toolbar within WordPress to give you more options for web design that requires basically no technical knowledge to do. WP Retina is for images for Retina devices. Something that can be useful, but again is not necessarily required to be used. So I am going to leave those off of this particular site and just use those 2 that I have already mentioned, the show post and the theme support. So now I'm going to go to Appearance and Theme Options. This is the page where you manage essentially the entire theme from. There's maybe 1 or 2 minor exceptions to that statement. The first thing that you want to do, though, is to set a Weaver sub-theme. That is all of these different boxes that you see at the bottom of the screen. Each of these boxes represents an overall design that you can have for your website. So if you are looking to do something specific in terms of you want it to be certain colors or you want it to have a certain look to it, whether you want sidebars or not, there might be something here that kind of stands out to you more than the others. In general, though, I often keep most of my Amazon affiliate sites as plain as I possibly can, so the focus really remains on the content itself, and people don't get distracted by the design instead. So I will generally end up using 2011 Lite as my subtheme. The plain subtheme or even the blank subtheme are other ones, maybe even magazine. A lot of these are fairly similar, but may simply have a couple of elements that are colored up instead of everything essentially being black and white. But for my site, I'll be using 2011 Lite here again. So once you set your sub-theme, you can then go on adjusting additional settings for the theme itself. You don't ever want to go through and change any settings before you have selected that sub-theme, because there are a lot of settings within Weaver that will get wiped out if you select a new sub-theme. So start here, use this as a base for your design, and then work from that. But don't ever come back and actually change the sub-theme unless you're willing to have all that wiped out. So once you have your sub-theme selected, you can then proceed on with setting the initial Weaver settings. In this main option tab, this is kind of the main area that you will find yourself using within Weaver Extreme. And this really works pretty similar to a lot of the previous versions of Weaver. However, they've kind of made it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for in Weaver Extreme. So I do like a lot of the changes that they have made, despite the fact that they may have removed a couple of particular features and put it over on the Pro version that you have to actually upgrade to get. However, Weaver Extreme still accomplishes all of the special design and customization tasks that I am generally looking to have my Amazon sites do. So I am still a huge fan of this new updated theme. So with that said, in terms of the general site design, I'll come back to that in just a few minutes. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is the basic settings that I would really recommend for all of you to adjust on this particular theme, no matter what your end site will end up looking like. These settings simply just go along better with the style that I will use for constructing this site. So with that said, the first setting that I would recommend to adjust is under main options, then you go to sidebars and layout. And we're looking for a setting to remove these sidebars. I think I passed over it already. Yeah, it's these initial drop-down boxes. Now, notice the words that are to the left of these different drop-down boxes. This one says blog post and page default, archive like default, page, blog, and post single page. Now this can be a little bit confusing initially, but basically what's going on with these 5 drop-down boxes is you're determining the default layout of different types of content on your website. For this site, I'm going to be setting everything to no sidebars. So I'm just going to be changing this top drop-down box and setting it to no sidebars. The second one is also no sidebars, and the rest say use default. So that's going to reference what I'm using up top here. If I wanted to do something like maybe all of my posts would contain a sidebar, I could leave them enabled here, change my pages to no sidebars. And so you can kind of adjust the different types of content, whether or not it's going to show the little sidebar widgets or not to go along with it. Again, though, for my site, I'm not going to use any sidebars by default. This is something, though, that I could enable on a per-page basis as I proceed through construction. Next up, I'm going to go over to the header tab, and I want to go to the header image section right here. This is going to drop me down the page just a little bit. And right up here in the top, I want to hide the header image on all devices. Now, what this is going to do, let me flip over here to my site real quick before I end up saving this. This is going to remove this primary image from the top of my site. However, there may be some people, I know at least one person has reached out and emailed me and said, hey, I'm planning on using something like Fiverr to get a graphic made for the top of my site as like a logo, and I'd rather use that instead of words perhaps, or maybe a logo along with some words. That is something that it is okay to do. If you can just use a graphical picture though, and still have these actual words at the top of your site, that's really the best way to go. However, you don't have to have a logo. You can simply just do what I'm going to be doing to this site here and hide the header image on all devices. Now, if you did want to use a logo, you obviously would not want to be changing this setting. If you want to upload a new picture for the header, you have to go to Appearance and Header. And this actually allows you to add a new image in, so it will then be shown up at the top of your site. Now let's say, for example, you have an image that has a logo on the left-hand side, but maybe the rest of it's blank, and you want this text to be showing over to the right-hand side of the logo. I'd still recommend creating your logo to be the default size, which is 940 pixels wide by 188 pixels tall. Then you just have your logo over on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side of it, perhaps, whichever works with what you're trying to go for. And you can simply move your title and your tagline over top of your image. You have right here, move title tagline over image, and then you can adjust the X and the Y values right here for the position to actually change where that information is showing up. If for some reason though, you were using a logo and everything was built in to where you didn't want to have this extra text showing up at all, you can also hide on all devices your title and your tagline using these options here. The next thing that I want to do is go to the Menus tab, and I'm going to go to the Info Bar section. It's going to bring me close to the bottom of the page, and in this section I want to hide my info bar on all devices. The info bar is an extra piece of content that's really going to be showing up like right here. This word home right here is part of the info bar. It can also include things like a search bar, login links, things of that nature. You can see right here, page navigation. But I really don't end up using this kind of stuff on my site. I like to manually link up the different sections. For example, instead of using a breadcrumb to link up the different parts of my site. So I simply hide this info bar using this drop-down box here. The next thing I want to do is go over to post specifics. Now here I want to go to post navigation to start with. Under post navigation, I want to change the single page navigation style to none. This is simply going to remove links on my posts that point back and forth to the more recent or older posts that are within that same category. It's just an extra link that's on the page that I find to be unnecessary. The next thing I want to do is on this same page here, and this is involving the post meta info area section. I'm going to be checking all 9 of these boxes right here. The main thing this is really accomplishing is hiding that info bar area, but this is going to be happening on the posts on my site. Whereas the previous setting that I changed, the one that was actually talking about the info bar, that had to do with my pages. So with all 9 of those checked, I am ready to proceed, and I'm going to go over to the footer now. In this footer section, I'm looking for this very last area called Site Copyright. And I want to check this little box here. This is simply going to remove this little powered by statement from the bottom of my pages. So now that I have all my settings changed, I'm going to save my changes. And then I could go and take a look at my live site to see how it reflected. However, notice here, when I go back to my main website and I just click on refresh, how I'm still not seeing my updated changes. Sometimes WordPress or even your browser can still cache an older version of something into your page. So what I'd recommend doing if you make a change like that you know is going to be showing something different, but you still don't see any changes on your live site, either edit the page that you're seeing, just make a minor adjustment to the page, or just simply visit a different page on your website. You can see here if I visit this other page on my site that the powered by statement at the bottom is now gone. Other things like the info bar up at the top of my page are also now missing. But again, my home page is currently going to still look the same until I make some changes to what's actually trying to get cached on that home page. But this is something that will be coming up here in just a little while in this class. So the next thing I need to do, involving my theme here that I have installed, is to add in code that I got from Google Analytics. Remember I told you to paste this code into a notepad file for the time being, and that we would come back to it. Well, I want to go ahead and select all of this analytics code now, and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to be entering this into my theme. So I want to go to advanced options this time, and finally to HTML insertion. You can really kind of put this code anywhere you want to. In any one of these boxes, it'll end up working fine. Personally, though, I often put it in the post footer simply because when somebody visits my site, if they start to let it load, it immediately click away. If I have this all the way at the footer, this may never actually get loaded, and so it won't count as a page view. Well, you might wonder why I would want to actually exclude some of the page views from my stats. Well, the reason why is because I can't help but think that Google would really never have all of these different services set up, things like analytics and webmaster tools, and not somehow use at least some kind of information from that to help with their Google rankings. So I strongly believe that there are at least a couple of aspects, things like their benchmarking, in particular bounce rates that occur on your site. A bounce rate is when somebody lands on your site and leaves it without viewing any additional pages of your site. So this can actually help to wipe out some of those page views that end up counting as a bounce instead. And so by not counting that, with it being down in the footer, that requires people to let the whole page load up before they really get tracked. So now I'm going to save my settings once again. And this adds Google Analytics onto my site now. So all I have to do to really verify that Analytics is running is just simply visit my website. When I visit a page that has that Analytics code on it, Google Analytics will start tracking it. And then you can come back at a later point in time and essentially analyze how your site's doing, where your traffic is coming from, how they are making their way through your site. And this information could be really, really valuable towards knowing how to make changes to your site in the future. So I like to go ahead and get all this set up from the get-go. So once my site is complete, I might already have some data available for me that I can kind of work with. So now the main thing that you have left with the theme at this point involves your overall site design. If you look at your site and there's a particular aspect of it that you're not incredibly thrilled with, maybe you want to change the color of something, the size of something, all that stuff can be done through the Weaver administration. This same area we've been in, the theme options, and then the main options tab, where you have all these different sub-tabs. Each of these different sections applies to a different area of your actual website. So if you wanted to change maybe the menu bar that's on your site, you look at your menu bar and you say, okay, it's black. I'd like to at least add a little bit of color to my website maybe, so I'd like for it to be blue. Well, in addition to the color of something, if you're looking at this and saying, okay, I want to change this black to blue, you also have to consider other colors that might be connected to it. For example, when I hover over a menu link, it actually changes the color to a different color. So you would want to look at your site and ask yourself whether you would also need to be changing these other colors, like the hover background color or the color of the text links that are actually showing up. You can see all this stuff kind of is different to a certain extent. So if I were to change my black to a really light blue background color, then the text and stuff might not be easily visible anymore. So I would also have to change that to correspond with it. So that kind of thing is found again on the main options. It's fairly self-explanatory to find the section of your site that you're looking for. Whereas I'm trying to change my menu background color, I just go to the menu page, and then I just simply look here, and any of these color boxes that you see throughout these settings are going to be altering the color of a different design element of your page. So menu bar background right here can be used, and I just simply select a new color, and that would change my background color for me. So if I stuck with a similar dark color, I might not have to change my text colors, for example. But if I needed to change the main text color, for example, right here, it's currently white. If I was going with a light background, I would want to flop this and make my text color dark, so they contrast against each other and can be seen easily. Other things like the hover background, maybe I don't want to keep that at the default value. So I'm still going with something kind of light, but it's a little more geared towards my color selection for my background here. So with a couple of simple changes like that, I'm not going to be able to see these changes. I'm just going to make a minor edit to this sample page here. And you can see how this will end up allowing me to see the theme changes that I have made, because I'm no longer viewing a cached version of that page that I had previously seen. So now my background of my menu is a dark blue, and when I hover over an item, it is now a light blue color instead. So the same type of thing is used to change really the coloring of pretty much anything throughout the site. The menu bar, for the most part, you're not going to use the secondary menu bar. You're probably just going to be using the primary menu bar. So these colors up at the top here. You have tons of other design aspects to it. Things like shadows, rounded corners, little extras that you can kind of add into your site design like that if you want. But again, this isn't something that you have to do. But I know a lot of you do like to try to customize the look of any given site that you're building. Other things like the site title and the tagline. How this is just basic text sitting in this little blank area at the top of my page. I could try to change this. Maybe I wanted to center this information at the top of my page. I could do with my title right here, I can change the X and the Y positions. You can see what the default values are right here, 7% for X and 0.25% for Y. Think of this like a grid where this little top area, basically this point right up here in the top left-hand corner would be 0, 0. And then so as you go down, this would be your Y, and as you go over to the right, this would be your X. So if I wanted to move this farther over to my right to perhaps try to center it, I can put in a value like maybe 25%. I might need to go more like 35 or 40% even to actually get that to center correctly. Same thing with my tagline. I could bump that over just a little bit as well to try to get it centered. Now, the only issue with trying to play around with a design like this is, number one, the caching, to where you may have to continue making minor updates to a page to get it to show you the changes correctly. But then, as you can see here, this adjusting of my words to the right a little bit, it's not an exact science. I kind of have to gauge things by sight and make minor changes to it as I go. So my title looks okay here. My description, my tagline, still needs to be moved over to the right more though. So I might go something more like 30% there. I might even bump my Y value down just a little bit to get the top title a little closer to my tagline. So that looks pretty close, where I have not really done a lot here, but I've just kind of tidied things up a little bit. So any different aspects of your site like this that you do want to kind of change around, you can do that. It's really not too difficult to actually do. You also have other effects like rounded corners, shadows, fading the outside background, a lot of this stuff on this wrapping areas tab here. A lot of this has to do with the overall design of the site. You can see I faded my background. I rounded the corners of my entire site enclosure here, and I've even added a little bit of a shadow to the edge of it. So simple changes within Weaver Extreme can be made to where you're not getting fancy with your design. You're not, hiring a professional web designer or having graphics made, things of that nature. Just some minor simple changes like this can really help to make your site look a lot better, but still allow your content to be the star of your site. To the point where if somebody lands on this page, you want the first thing that their eye sees and really goes for is the content of your page, because that's what is important for this type of website. With that said, feel free to play around with individual aspects if there's certain things that you want to change, but hopefully this at least gives you a general idea of how you can use this theme to change the design of your site, to adjust the different colors especially that are there. You can even do things like changing font sizes for the different areas of your website in these settings too. So once you are happy with the way your website looks as a whole, in terms of the overall layout of everything, the menus, in terms of their placement, their coloring, the titles and stuff up at the top of your page, everything but what is actually going on in the center of your page as far as your content. When you're happy with that, you can proceed on and begin setting up your website structure. Now for creating our website structure, what we want to do is get the initial pages set up that are going to be the primary pages of our website, especially the pages where we're going to be adding additional content to those pages as a subpage. This is going to be our home page of our site, our category pages of our site, and then we're kind of going to do a little bit of a twist on what WordPress tries to do by default with a category in a post. And we're going to change all that around a little bit and make it work slightly different for us. This is going to get us in position for next week so we can actually go through and begin adding content to our site. So for now, I want to go back to my site. and begin creating some pages. So first I'm going to go to all pages. By default, there's going to be a page called sample page already built into your site. We're going to trash this default page. And in fact, you can do the same thing in the listing of posts as well. There's going to be a hello world post. You can trash that one as well. Going back over to my pages now, I'm going to be creating a series of new pages on my site. The first one of these is going to be the home page. I'm just going to call this home page Fastest SSDs for Consumer PCs. Whatever you come up with for the title of your homepage is really not that important at this point in time. This is something that you can come back and change later. And in fact, since you are preventing search engines from actually indexing your site right now, they're not even going to be picking up this kind of information. The main purpose of this, though, we're actually going to go ahead and publish this page without any content in it at all. And the purpose is to create a placeholder page. I'm going to go to Settings and Reading first. And remember at the beginning of the class, I mentioned I'd be coming back here to set a home page. That's exactly what I'm doing now. I select Static Page here and select the page I just created as my front page. And then I can save my changes. For now, I'm still leaving search engine visibility disabled. We will be enabling this next week and not currently. So now I'm going to proceed and create more pages. This time, the page that you create for your own site can kind of vary depending on what you are trying to do. If you look back at your site planning, basically everything that is a top page here, the home page, the about page, and then the pages that are going to contain the rest of my content under them, these are my category pages. I want to make WordPress pages for each of these top items here. And then the content we go back and create next week is actually going to be all the different articles and product review pages that go along with it. So the first one I'm going to do here is going to be my brand page that's going to have all my products listed under it. I'm going to call this SSD brands, at least for right now, and go ahead and publish this one. And I'm going to create another new one, and this is going to be my info section. I'm going to call this How to Make Your Computer Faster with SSD, and publish this one again. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and create one last one for my About page. Not horribly important that we do this page right now, but we're just going to go ahead and put this into place. So at this point, I have a home page. You can see it labeled as the front page of my site here. And then I have created pages for my categories and also a page for my About page as well. Once we have this completed, I then want to go to Post. I'm going to be going to the category section now. And basically for each of these pages that we just created, except for the About page and except for the front page, I want to create a WordPress category to go along with it. So I'm going to call this one SSD Brands and add new category. And then finally, I'm going to create one for how to make your computer faster. So I could call this something having to do with that category name. Since this is my info content though, I'm actually just going to call this info, because nobody's really going to end up seeing these different names right here. The reason why is because I'm not going to use the default WordPress category pages. If you view a category page on WordPress, you'll see this: your domain name, the word category, and then the actual category name followed by it. It's going to be a standard page that lists all of the different posts that are contained within that category. However, this is what's known as a category archive page, and I have actually had my SEO plugin prevent the indexing of these pages, both now and forever into the future. Reason why is because I don't like them. I don't like the default WordPress page that it uses for categories because it doesn't allow you to customize it. You really can't do anything about the title of your page. You can't do anything about the content. You can't do anything about how posts are actually displayed on that page. So I basically hijack and replace the default WordPress categories system and replace it with my own system that allows me to customize those pages. So how I accomplish this is actually using one of the plugins that we installed called 301 Redirects. I'm going to Settings and 301 Redirects now, but I'm going to keep this category page open. The reason why is because I need to know what these slugs are right here. So for this one, my info page, my slug is called info. So I'm going to copy my slug and go over to the 301 redirect page. Now what I want to do is type in the word category with forward slashes on either side of it. And then finally, I want to add my slug onto the end of it. So this represents how somebody reaches this category page that I was showing you here. Category, basically everything that comes after your domain name here. So for one of these, it's going to be info. Then I put a forward slash on the end. So all of your words here are surrounded by forward slashes. The next part of this is your destination. The destination is going to be the page that you created for that category page. So for my info section, it's the Make Computer Faster area. I'm going to copy the full link for that page, and I'm going to paste it into my destination. Now technically, you don't have to use the full URL. You could just use the back half of it, like so. This simply allows you to redirect from one of those areas to the next. So I do the same thing again now with my brand page. And now I'm going to save my changes. So what happens by setting up these redirects right here is when somebody attempts to go to one of these category pages on my WordPress site, they shouldn't actually reach my category page. Now, I'm probably getting my cached version of this page in here, so it's not going to work correctly for me at the moment, but you will get to see how this works later on. We will actually be setting up our site to where all of the posts that we create for the brand category, for example, will all automatically show up on this brands page for us. This really helps with some of the initial website creation, and it also helps with future website maintenance that you might do, where you would revisit a site and maybe want to add a new page, or maybe a product gets discontinued and you have to remove a page. By having all that automatically connected so it'll update your site for you, it makes things a lot easier. So you can just focus on the content. So that's the idea here behind setting up all of these placeholder pages to begin with, and these different categories along with the redirects that go to it. So the next thing we will be doing will come in our next class, where we're actually going to start adding content to our site. We're going to be building up the content of these different placeholder pages that I have added into the site, along with at least some of the additional pages on our site. Basically everything except for our advertising pages. So next week will be more of a focus on getting this part of our site set up. And then the week following, we'll be getting into all of our advertising. Now, just like our first lesson, and something I will be continuing on for all lessons throughout this series, I now open up the floor to any questions that you may have about anything I've gone over with you during today's class, preferably. However, anything having to do with getting your website set up, getting your domain registered, setting up your web hosting, getting WordPress plugins and themes up and running, even design of your website. Any questions relating to that kind of stuff with today's class, I do welcome. I just enter them into the chat box if you have something. And if I'm in the middle of answering a question already, I will get to yours as quickly as I possibly can. Kind of, Gina. Gina's asking, would it be better to wait to submit your sitemap and verify after your site is all done, having to do with Google Webmaster Tools? The verification part, I would recommend to just go ahead and get that set up. However, the part where I submitted my sitemap and Google Webmaster Tools wouldn't really allow me to go through with that because I'm blocking the search engine. That one minor step could be held off until we actually start adding in our content. Basically, at the beginning of next week's class, we will be removing that setting that prevents search engines from being able to index our site. And then we're going to start publishing content on the site, so Google can actually start picking it up then. Yes, Jacob, you can do these categories on the sidebar perhaps instead of up at the top of your page. You actually can just completely remove the menu bar from your site if you would prefer, and you could instead use a sidebar When I was going through all of the theme customization, basically any of the ways that I had set up the site, where I wasn't using sidebars in my sidebar and layout section. You know, if you have a reason why you do want to use a sidebar instead, it is quite okay. There's nothing wrong with modifying the design of a site, at least to a certain extent. The one main thing that really would come to my mind having to do with completely removing the top menu and replacing it with only sidebar links is that it kind of can affect your search rankings as a result, just depending on the way you do it. Basically, the way you see a site is not necessarily the way a search engine is going to see a site. If you look at the source code of a page and actually look for the different elements that are on your page, like the title and the tagline here, the menu items, the content of my page, you can see that they do have a natural order to them, despite how it may look on the actual website. So for example, if I didn't have this top menu and I only had content and a right-hand sidebar, if I looked through the content of my page, I would find my content first. Right here would be where my content would be contained if I had any. I don't have any in this article yet though. And then my sidebars would end up coming after my content. Now sometimes this can be a good thing when it has to do with SEO. Your page content does get a little more focus put on it that way, whereas your links that are pointing out to different pages of your site end up being at the bottom of your page when a search engine sees it. So in that regard, there are a couple of links, often the home link and these main category links, that I generally do want to try to keep up at the top of my page for search engine purposes. So these pages can be perceived as being more important than other pages on my site. But if you would like to maybe use both this one and the sidebar, there's certainly nothing wrong with doing something like that. The sidebar links, though, any extra links that you have on a page can drag down the search rankings of a page. The more incoming links you have can help to boost the rankings of a page. So that's how I'm making the home page and my category pages here more important, because all the pages on my site are going to end up linking back to them. Well, if you then have sidebar links, you basically have 2 links going to all these pages, although technically Google shouldn't really be counting more than 1 link for any given page. Yes, Paul, you can definitely import your own header image to work with this theme. If you go to Appearance and Header, you have the current header right here, which you can obviously hide, but you can add a new image right here by simply uploading your own image file. The suggested dimensions, though, I would recommend trying to stick with those dimensions if you can. Otherwise, you end up having to make other changes within the Weaver theme. However, it is possible to use logos and header images that are not this exact size. So I have done them in the past. You can make some edits to the theme options that actually allow you to do stuff like that. In the header section, for example, you have this area right here, suggested header image height, where maybe you wanted to have an image that was as long as the page, 940 pixels, but maybe you didn't want it to be 188 tall. Maybe you wanted to go with something a little shorter. You could do that and simply change the height that is specified here. Obviously, you would not want to be hiding this anymore if you do upload your own image. Other things like if you were to replace the title and the tagline of the site with a header image to where you only have the image at the top of the site, I would recommend having the header image link to the home page. You can also do things like not show a header image on the home page of your site, but have it show up on the rest of the pages throughout your site. So this theme can do from anywhere from a simple header image change all the way up to doing some more complicated designs. Jacob is asking, is there a limit to how many products you can add to this website? I'll answer that one first and then go on to the second part. There is no limit on how many products you could add to a site like this. With WordPress, you'll be able to create as many posts or as many pages as you want to. However, I do recommend initially starting off with a 20-page website. My particular site, these 5 pages right here will really be the only pages on my site where I'm going to have any kind of advertising. All the rest of the pages are going to be informational content geared towards getting me search rankings, bringing traffic into my site, and then helping to funnel the traffic along to my product pages. So it's not that there's a limit on how many products you can promote on a site, but I would recommend trying to have your informational content outweigh your product pages in terms of numbers. I often find myself going about 2 times as many info pages as I have product pages. There could be some minor exceptions to this. If you were building a website that maybe you had done a lot of your keyword research and all of the brand and product names and model numbers and stuff like that that you could find, if they have a decent amount of traffic and really low search engine competition, you might be able to just make a site completely full of nothing but product review pages. However, with your higher competition niches, something like what I'm trying to target here, I'm most likely not going to get a search ranking on a term like Samsung SSD. However, this is where my rankings will come in, and I bring the traffic in and funnel my traffic along to the product pages to make the sales. So to a certain extent, the answer to that question on how many products would you add to a site could kind of vary depending on your niche, the search engine competition that you found for various keyword phrases. All that kind of stuff can kind of affect really how you end up building your site. But for the average person that's targeting what's likely to be a higher competition niche where you can't get keyword or search rankings on the product name keyword phrases, then you kind of want to limit yourself on how many products. Now, the other part of your question, Jacob, was based on my experience, how much money does the site bring in when it is ranked by Google? That also kind of varies from one site to the next, heavily dependent upon the niche that you select, the type of products that you choose, the price of those products and also what your commission percentage would be on them on the Amazon affiliate network. With that said, though, a general average for the sites, the 20-page websites, I should say, that I build, that are structured kind of like the one I'm teaching you guys to build here, they usually average somewhere in the 50 upwards of maybe $200 a month neighborhood. And again, this is just from the initial 20 pages that I build up on the site. And I really don't do much in the way of ongoing maintenance or extra marketing work and stuff like that for these websites. I more focus on moving from one site to the next. So if I can put a site together in a single week, after a month, I can have 4 or 5 of them put together. And if you keep this up over the course of even just for 1 year, you can really get almost obscene number of Amazon sites built. And the $100, $200 a month per site quickly begins to add up when you start to do stuff like that. Considering the amount of time and work that I put into any individual site, though, I'm pretty pleased with how they go in terms of how much they earn compared with the amount of work that I put into it, especially considering that work keeps paying me every month. You know, that $100, $200 a month, I get it once, but then I get it the next month and the next month and so on and so forth. And so you can kind of make all that snowball by building more than one site. So my approach definitely is geared more towards running a larger number of smaller sites as opposed to maybe making one super site. You can do stuff like that if you build a site. For example, you build 5 or 10 different Amazon sites and you step back and say, okay, wow, this one site out of all the rest of them has so much more traffic and does so much more better than the other ones. Maybe just because of the niche that you choose, maybe because there's lower search competition. There's nothing wrong with revisiting those sites once you have some kind of proof to back it up and expanding them. I've certainly done that kind of stuff and been able to top those average numbers that I gave you. But as far as the initial basic approach of 20 pages, that's on average what I see and what I would also expect for my trainees to be able to expect as well. Are there niches that you recommend for us to do? There's no one predefined niche that is better than another one. However, if I had to summarize what kind of niche you should go after, I can summarize that into a single word for you with saying hobbies. Hobbies of any kind, whether they're super, super popular hobbies or more of your strange, less common type of hobby, you're still going to have a pretty decent audience for any of those when you're dealing with the entire internet. And hobbies are also things that people will generally purchase more frequently online. I know for me, when it comes to my online buying habits, my purchases are usually for a couple of specific reasons. And one of those is definitely hobby related. If there's something that I'm into personally, I obviously do a lot of computer stuff. Even in my spare time for non-work related things, I enjoy computers. I play the electric guitar. I like flying remote control aircraft and things of that nature. So, when it comes to me wanting to purchase something for myself, I'm generally end up doing that online. A lot of the more specialty kinds of hobbies that I might have, I can't find those products in local retail stores. And even if I could, Amazon often has a better price for them. So I know I'm not the only one when it comes to that type of thing. Other people do the same type of thing with their own hobbies. Beyond my hobbies, the other most common thing that I will be buying for online would be gifts. Um, Birthdays. I have a wife and 3 kids, so I have a lot of birthdays throughout the year. Obvious things like Christmas, holidays, where you're purchasing gifts for them. The other main type of online buying that I really consider beyond those two, hobbies and gift buying, is kind of more for personal care, health-related purposes. Personally, I'm not a buyer in those lines of products. I don't buy anything health or personal care related online. If I do need something related to that, I'll go to a local retail store and buy it. However, there are a lot of people out there who will exclusively buy their health and personal care stuff online. It might be an embarrassment factor, for example. Different problems, acne, BO, overweight, whatever the case may be, some people are okay with it and other people might be embarrassed by going to a store and having to, say if you're a 35-year-old guy and you have to go and pick up a bag of Depends, that could be a little embarrassing. I could definitely see wanting to buy that stuff online if that was the case. So those are kind of the 3 main areas, at least in the general terms, that I believe the most sales are happening online, things that I've seen from my own personal experiences with running my own sites, and also things that I hear from other fellow Amazon affiliates and even just other affiliate marketers in general outside of the Amazon niche. Those are kind of your 3 main areas to pursue. But again, get specific with your niche selection there. Don't just pick something like hobbies in general. You can't cover all hobbies on a single website. You could easily have thousands of different websites, each covering one specific hobby or even a minor aspect of a hobby. For example, one of my hobbies I mentioned, computers. I'm building a site just about solid state hard drives. Well, there's probably 10 different components in a computer that are fairly high priced, and I could create a site about each one of those different components if I wanted to. So that's kind of getting into the more specific, narrowed down niche selection. That's really what I recommend to go after, something highly focused like that, but still within one of those 3 general categories I mentioned.